let's jump in and talk about this thing that you guys may be more familiar with, are these different types of framework. I think that the first question that a lot of people ask me, what do we need to know about these things? And again, what I would say it is super high level, 5 to 7 words, looking at the acronym and understanding what the acronym is super important. So let's take a look at some of these frameworks. The International Organization for Standardization, which you would think would be the IOS, comes up with these things that they call ISOs. And so ISO 27001 and 27002, usually we see this one on the exam. And so what this is for information technology providers, there's these different security management techniques that you have to adhere to. You would pay a non-interested third party to come in and actually do an ISO, kind of like an ISO 9000. That's something that you guys are probably familiar with as well. But for our purposes here, the ISO 27000 series is for specifically for security. So remember how I was talking about that crosswalk before? If you actually implemented any of those NIST frameworks before, you would probably have close to 80%, 80% of this ISO 27000 series completed just by doing a NIST implementation, depending on how many POAMs you have and everything. Just to give you an idea of the crosswalk, like how much crossover there is between the two. And so at a high level, know that the ISO 27000 series is for information technology and how you practice security. Another one that I know that there's a big chapter here in town, but also in San Diego, in Charleston, in Atlanta, in Dallas, in Colorado Springs, Denver, basically wherever you guys are at, there's a big constituency of the ISACA chapter, Information System Audit and Control Association. Usually they're monthly meetings that you can go and attend, and you hear somebody get up there and talk about something cool that they're working on. One of the things that ISACA published is this thing that they call control objectives, the OB, control objectives for information and related technology. So COBIT, not to be confused with COVID. And the timeliness of this is that they released this right around end of 2019 was the last rev that they did for this. 2020, this started to become more prevalent. And so when you just say it, hear somebody say it and you've never heard of it before, somebody says COBOL, you're like, talking COVID? No, we didn't say that. It's COBIT. Well, what is it? Well, it focuses on these 5 key principles. So check it out. Easy way to remember this is 5 key principles. Look at how many letters are in the actual acronym. COBIT, 5 key principles. If I was you, what I would do is at a super high level, make a note card that says COBIT on the front, define it, control objectives for information technology, and then what is this? What does it mean to you? Meeting stakeholders' needs, covering the end-to-end enterprise, applying a single integrated framework, enabling a holistic approach, separating governance from management. Again, if you went through and applied the NIST cybersecurity framework to this, it's likely if you did that before you did COBIT, you would have 80% compliance just by implementing this to this right here. So there's a lot of crossover, and you can crosswalk it between what controls you've already done to what controls you need to done. So the next one is this NIST cybersecurity framework, or NIST security control framework. It's likely out of all of these here. And what do I mean by that? Out of all of these. So security frameworks, right? So the ISO, COBIT, NIST, you'll see one of these on your exam. I'd be losing money to you if I told you it was going to be this one. because sometimes, we see those ISO questions come up. Sometimes we see the COPIT questions come up. For all of these security frameworks, there's going to be one question for these guys. So that's why, when you ask the question, do you need to know the nitty gritty about each one of these? No. 5 to 7 words about each one of them. And for you guys that are actually practicing this, that you feel like you're an expert in it, a lot of those questions that are risk management based, if you've been doing this for a little while, you can definitely get those correct just by the first time you see it, I bet. But down here, you can look at what is some of the commonality between them. Basically the 2-letter acronym that makes up the family of controls is shown here. And then what those controls mean, what the family of controls mean to the right hand in this table that you see here. Usually, what we typically will quote for our customers is that implementing the NIST 853 will take roughly 8 months for one of our experts to implement this for a system. So I say that for the 53, but the 800-171, usually we can do the assessment of that in 3 weeks for, let's say, a defense industrial based client that we have. 3 weeks, we can do the assessment. And then depending on, the residual risk, the POAM, the plan of action and milestone for the 800-171, just like with this guy up here, the 53, it depends. Like if they ain't got time, they ain't got money, I mean, that POAM would probably expire, because typically you only have 180 days from the last day that the POAM was published to implement those controls or to update the POAM. And because of that, we're seeing quite a bit of the hornet's nest starting to stir with the NIST 800-171 because of CMMC. And so they are tightly coupled at the hip between the 110 controls and the CMMC level 2. Usually for the assessment for CMMC level 2, it takes us right around 3 weeks because we just used the 800-171. And then, oftentimes this is something that you have to put in the SPRS system for the DoD, or SPRS. All right, so at a super high level, that is the security frameworks and what you need to know for those.